Hello, everyone. We're going to get started here in just a couple of minutes. While everyone is getting admitted into the room here, and just before we get started, just as a side note, we are recording this session, so it will be available on demand as part of our STEM Synergy Leadership Series as soon as we are done, probably within a few hours. So if you want to go back and take a look at it or see it for the first time, it will be available for you on the Engagement Center through Keep Indiana Learning. Okay, great. So I'm Amanda McCammon. I am with STEM Synergy. I'm the coordinator for STEM Synergy through Keep Indiana Learning. And STEM Synergy is the STEM leg of Keep Indiana Learning, which actually is housed under the Central Indiana Educational Service Center. But Keep Indiana Learning is a little unique in the term of it has a statewide reach. So STEM Synergy provides resources, professional development, and support for educators, schools, and districts across the state of Indiana within the realm of STEM. And we are super fortunate to be offering, in collaboration with some of our friends at Ball State, a leadership series specific to STEM. They are going to be leading off today's session. It's the first of a 3-part series. We do have an introductory session to this series that's also posted on the Engagement Center as part of the leadership series, so definitely check that out. And then you're going to want to join after today. You're going to want to take a look at parts 2 and 3. Part 2 will be at the end of June, and then part 3 is going to be in July. So thank you again for joining us, and I'm going to turn it over to our friends at Ball State to lead the session.
All right, wonderful, Amanda. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Welcome everyone to our presentation today, Leading the Way for STEM. This is part 1. And as Amanda had mentioned, this presentation actually follows on the heels of a presentation that she gave titled Introduction to the STEM Leadership Series. So I definitely encourage, if you have not watched that presentation, to go back and as it delves further into what exactly is integrative STEM education, STEM literacy, and more. For part 1 today, the title is STEM Leadership, Facilitating a STEM-Centric Culture in PK-12 Schools. First, we're going to start with a little presentation and an introduction. So for our introduction, I wanted to introduce myself and my colleagues here. We have Dr. Rachel Giesa and Dr. Annette Rose. And so I'm going to ask them to go ahead and introduce themselves. We'll first get to know Dr. Rachel Giesa. Rachel, if you could please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rachel Giesa, and I am an assistant clinical professor in the Department of Educational Leadership at Ball State University. I've been at the university for 7 years, and I primarily work with folks who are planning to be principals or superintendents of schools. Prior to this, I was an art teacher in Zionsville, Avon, Greenfield, and Indianapolis public schools. And then I joined the Department of Defense Education Activities. So I worked with military-dependent children in South Korea. And then I was an administrator in Japan. And I was the Gifted Resources Coordinator in Quantico. So I did that military tour, and now I'm back in Indiana, and I am passionate about STEM and innovative learning and developing leaders to promote that.
Thank you so much. And Dr. Rose, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. Marionette Rose here. I'm an associate professor from the Department of Educational Studies at Ball State University. During the first half of my career, I taught in public schools as a technology and education teacher, implementing design-based learning experiences for students in 5th to 12th grade. Then after joining Ball State in 2001, I became a teacher educator, and I focused my curriculum development and my research and teaching on integrative teaching and learning approaches, especially those that focus on the application of science, mathematics, and social studies to promote energy literacy and technological literacy. And now I spend most of my time working with graduate students and that focus upon these issues of STEM integration. Krista?
All right, thank you so much. And again, welcome everyone. My name is Krista Stith, and I am the Director of the Center for Gifted Studies and Talent Development at Ball State University. I've been in this position for 5 years now, and I work quite a bit with the high ability communities and thinking about in what ways we can support educators and families in providing high quality learning experiences for high ability students. My PhD is in curriculum and instruction in integrative STEM education. And so I'm also used quite a bit at Ball State in the different STEM and STEAM initiatives, such as running a K-5 STEM club, robotics, teaching engineering classes for high school students, and a variety of other approaches in thinking about STEM literacy in students. So without further ado, first thing we're going to talk about is our agenda. So by the end of this session, what we hope is to understand the operational definition of integrative STEM education, explain how the 9 leadership competencies may foster integrative STEM culture within a school and district, and identify schools in Indiana that have implemented integrative STEM programming. And I will say, as we're addressing schools in Indiana, this is certainly not an inclusive list of schools because there are many more examples throughout the state of schools doing really exceptional work in integrative STEM. So Rachel, Annette, and I really wanted to start with providing a brief background and why we believe STEM leadership is important and how we've identified a need to learn more about what makes an impactful leader in STEM education. And by impactful leader, we'll talk more about this, but that could be a teacher leader, a school leader, a community leader, so on and so forth. So we're going to delve for a few minutes into how we identified this need and how we researched potential solutions for this need and understanding impactful STEM leadership, and then how we communicated our results so that it would have utility for these leaders. So when Annette, Rachel, and I met back in 2017, we really wanted to think purposefully about what makes a really impactful STEM leader. And so an impactful leader would be someone who's well-informed in the decision-making and supporting of high quality, robust, and equitable STEM programs. And admittedly, that's a lot to ask for STEM leaders today, or for any leaders, because many leaders may not necessarily have a lot of resources to think about STEM education from a school or from a district level, and to think about STEM integratively from a school or district level. Additionally, these leaders may not necessarily have a STEM background, which may make that decision-making a little bit more challenging. Another barrier is that many stakeholders in the school community may have the core beliefs and behaviors that are not necessarily conducive to the kind of culture shift that we're looking for in integrative STEM education. And then also thinking about the changes in policy decisions that may prioritize some educational systems over others, and how there may be greater attention placed on some issues in a school culture that are not necessarily STEM related. So that prioritization can also be complicated to think about. So what we were thinking about, is there any interest in trying to understand this idea of impactful STEM leadership? Is there any interest in preparing school leaders and teacher leaders in thinking about STEM from this organization level? So what we decided to do was really better understand, okay, what exactly is needed, if there is any need at all. So the first thing we did was a needs assessment to, again, have that informed understanding of, is this something that leaders are interested in, that STEM at an organization level? After we conducted a needs assessment, we then interviewed school leaders throughout Indiana, and we conducted some site visits as well. Programs that we felt had a really good position of integrative STEM programming within the school or within the district. So after we conducted these interviews and we conducted these site visits, we then had a modified Delphi study. And if you're not familiar with what a modified Delphi study is, it's a research technique that we used to survey experts throughout the nation who are STEM experts. And we went through a series of rounds with those experts and understanding what are the qualities, the competencies, the skills of impactful STEM leaders. And we just kept going in rounds until all of these experts came to a consensus. And then while we were also working on this modified Delphi study, we were also offering a course at Ball State University on integrative STEM leadership. And so what we were looking at were, again, those competencies of impactful STEM leaders. And so we were taking a look at the course evaluations after that course at Ball State was completed to help continue informing our understanding of STEM leadership. So then after the needs assessment, the interviews, the site visits, the modified Delphi study, and looking at the course evaluations, we identified 9 domains. And within these 9 domains, leaders have a variety of capacities to support high quality STEM. So those domains are mission and culture, equity, diversity, and inclusion, infrastructure and programming, curriculum, instruction, extended learning, professional learning, assessment, and evaluation. And so one important thing to note is that even though we were talking about school leaders and their capacities as an individual, we really are expecting that a collaborative leadership approach would be needed. This certainly cannot be done by one person to have a culture shift in an entire organization. So that collaborative leadership is an important keystone piece to developing coherent integrative STEM programming that will hopefully lead to career and college ready students and who are also STEM literate citizens. So from these research outcomes, then came the dissemination, because we felt it was very important for educational leaders, teacher leaders, community leaders to have utility with this information. So we published a book through Rowman and Littlefield, and the title is Leadership in Integrative STEM Education, Collaborative Strategies for Facilitating an Experiential and Student-Centered Culture. So this book is 10 chapters. Chapter 1 is simply an introduction to integrative STEM education. And then the following 9 chapters are those 9 domains that we just discussed in the previous slide. This is a co-edited book. And so we have 16 authors from around the US who are STEM experts in these areas of extended learning, curriculum and instruction, evaluation, so on and so forth. We also have 3 in-depth case studies where we looked at the practices of integrative STEM programs around the US. All right, so from here, I'm going to ask Rachel if you'd like to go ahead and follow us through to the next part of this presentation.
Thank you, Krista. Well, everyone, we are going to try to use a Jamboard here. So I'm going to put the Jamboard link in the chat, and we're posing the following question. In what ways do you think integrative STEM education is different from STEM education? And we'd love for you to provide your input here using Jamboard. If you haven't used Jamboard before, that's okay. We'll guide you through it. So on the left side of the screen, you will see a variety of different tools that you can use, one of which is a sticky note. It's the 4th one down. And if you click on a sticky note, you will see a bright yellow color. You can actually choose if you want your sticky note to be a different color though. So green, blue, pink, and orange are some options. And you can type in your response of what you think makes integrative STEM education different from STEM education. And go ahead and take about the next minute to consider the differences between integrative STEM education and STEM education, and add your input in the Jamboard, please. It's great to see your participation here. So, see, some of the responses include intentional collaboration between educators. There are no educational silos. Radical collaboration among educators and students. Focus on community problems. Integrative would place STEM as a component in different subjects and topics rather than a separate class. It would be a part of the curriculum in all areas, not a separate area of the curriculum. Integrative STEM education adds other disciplines outside of the traditional STEM subjects. So this is wonderful. Thank you for your feedback here. And you're welcome to type in the chat if you have any questions or comments, or if you'd like to add to the input that you've provided here. See another one that says integrative STEM modules, transdisciplinary approach, where science, tech ed, engineering, and math all play in the learning. Okay, so these are excellent ideas about integrative STEM education and how that would be different from traditional STEM education. So let's go back to our presentation. And we're going to provide a definition for you of what Krista, Annette, and I had determined to be integrative STEM education. And we've spent several years considering the proper definition that we want to share with all of you. An important point to highlight is the focus on STEM literacy. We really want to promote the STEM literate students throughout the K-12 experience so that they are career and college ready upon graduation. So our definition includes integrative STEM education refers to teaching and learning experiences that connect the concepts, principles, and practices of multiple STEM and non-STEM disciplines. A coherent integrative STEM curriculum stretches seamlessly across disciplines and grade levels, engaging students in the authentic and experiential learning that promotes STEM literacy. So that's the definition that we pose. And it's really important to highlight that intentional integration between STEM and non-STEM disciplines. And in our first presentation with Amanda, we spoke a lot about transdisciplinary learning, which would promote this concept. When we think about who is an integrative STEM leader, I highly recommend that you look at our book. We've provided a great list there, but we want leaders to be educators, professional staff, and those who are truly vested in the interest of promoting integrative STEM education. So those leaders could include school level leaders, whether they're principals, superintendents, teacher leaders, school counselors, STEM teachers, non-STEM teachers. We also have community partners They could be business partners, organizational partners. And then we have professional staff and those in higher ed who can support this initiative. And most folks who are leaders in this field have promoted past STEM education work, are currently implementing STEM education, or want to innovate more in STEM education practices. When we think about what leadership competencies or skills foster integrative STEM programming in schools, we provided a list of some competencies we've found to be important, but we'd love to hear about the skills that you believe are important. So let's go back to that Jamboard. And in the toggle bar of the Jamboard, you'll be able to look at the next slide, which poses the following question. What skills should teachers or school leaders have to foster integrative STEM programming in schools and districts? And let's take a few minutes to answer this question. So go ahead and use your Post-it note or sticky note, and you can add a response there. All right, some responses that I'm seeing are excellent listeners and observers, value people and celebrate risk-taking, offer actionable feedback, an attitude of valuing other subject areas, disciplines, and of collaboration with others, integrated or across the curriculum content building experience, and being open to new ideas, collaboration, and willing to try new things. So I see some trends here regarding collaboration, actionable feedback, risk-taking, observing and listening, promoting integration of multiple disciplines, and considering content building. These are all wonderful skills that we do agree with you that need to be brought into STEM leadership skills and competencies that they need. So let's go back to the presentation. Right, next slide. So in the following couple of slides, Annette and I are going to be talking about the different competencies that we identified and some skills that we found through research that STEM leaders should or could have in order to effectively drive integrative STEM programming to promote STEM literacy throughout the entire school and PK-12 experience for students. So on the left side of the slide, we have included the 9 competencies. And those 9 competencies are all color-coded, and we're going to go in order throughout all of the 9 competencies to talk about skills that leaders can have, and then provide examples of where there's been great mission or culture, for example, in this slide, in schools. So here we're talking about mission and culture. And we found that STEM leaders really promote an envisioned culture of what integrative STEM programming should look like. And that would include promoting problem solving, project-based learning, problem-based learning, design-based learning, and inquiry-based learning. We also focus on the importance of having a STEM leadership team, and that STEM leadership team should be inclusive of a variety of stakeholders, including community partners, parents, caregivers, school counselors, educational leaders, STEM and non-STEM teachers. Student voices are very important, and other school stakeholders. And they can help in the development, implementation, and evaluation of that STEM mission and thinking about the STEM culture. It's important also for leaders to guide the focus on interweaving students' well-being, their social emotional needs, their career and college readiness needs with their academic needs to be successful across the board. And then we want STEM leaders to help in guiding through the collaboration with STEM leadership teams and school stakeholders, the development, implementation, and use of the STEM mission. So here's an example that we have here. Lafayette Sunnyside Intermediate School in Lafayette, Indiana. Krista and Annette had a great opportunity to visit this school. And this school is located between a major research institution, which would be Purdue, and a booming manufacturing area. And within this school, they have a mission and focus where they say at Sunnyside, we have heart. And heart stands for honesty, effort, attitude, respect, and teamwork. And that's something that we're looking for with building and developing within students at the school. At Sunnyside, there is a focus on an integrated curriculum with STEM and humanities subjects. And they have an award-winning fine and performing arts program with a variety of opportunities that promote the integration of STEM within those disciplines. So now we're going to look at the competency of equity, diversity, and inclusion. And within this focus, we found in our research that STEM leaders really need to ensure equitable access and inclusivity for all students to participate and feel welcomed and a part in STEM content, discipline, and activities. So we focus on curriculum and instruction and the participation in STEM academies, projects, competitive teams, and community-based learning for students across grade levels, across different subgroups to promote inclusive learning opportunities for all students. We want to ensure that all students feel welcome in their learning environment. So STEM leaders can create non-intimidating learning environments that really are accessible for all students, to include students that may have disabilities, students that identify as minorities or underrepresented students, and students from low socioeconomic backgrounds. Here we are providing an example from Lawrence Township. Lawrence Township uses an equity audit, and through that equity audit, they've really looked at all of the needs of the school to determine if they're providing equitable opportunities to all students. Through that data, they've determined action steps, targeted dates and goals for completion of those action steps, and identified the roles and responsibilities and next steps to ensure that there are equitable and inclusive opportunities for all students to succeed. So now we're going to look at infrastructure and programming. From our research, we've found that STEM leaders need to develop accessible learning spaces, and that's something we just mentioned when we talked about equity, diversity, and inclusion. So those accessible spaces can be part of laboratory spaces to ensure that they're equipped with the proper technologies. There should be up-to-date and appropriate low-tech and high-tech materials and resources. And there should be spaces that promote collaboration and group work and experimentation. STEM leaders can also work with the leadership team and curriculum staff to ensure that the schedule is designed to promote collaboration for educators and students across disciplines and across grade levels. We also want the schedule to promote authentic learning and real-world learning experiences. Through transdisciplinary learning, that we can promote that integration between STEM and non-STEM disciplines. And then co-planning and co-teaching is so important for educators to have time for. So providing common planning period times, promoting the use of PLCs, and promoting co-teaching experiences and opportunities for teachers will provide more integrative learning opportunities for students. Here is an example in Anderson. We're focused on Anderson Preparatory Academy. Within this academy, there are 3 maker spaces, and these maker spaces provide very diverse learning environments for the students. There are lab spaces, blended learning opportunities, and even outdoor classrooms. The academy also partners with community-based and business-based industries within the area, and they have sponsorships. The equipment and furniture are brought to the academy to promote project-based learning and that collaboration that we're looking for within schools. And now I'm going to pass the presentation on to Annette.
Hello, everybody. I think we can all agree that characterizing these 9 domains as skill sets can really focus us in on that opportunity that we can all use to improve. So as we go through and look at the remaining competencies, let's really think about how these particular ideas or suggestions that were provided by our Delphi panel and the examples that we're looking at, how that might apply to our own schools and our culture. So in the curriculum competency, we're really hopeful that educational leaders are going to be able to hone their own skills in facilitating the development of integrated curriculum. And of course, this would include those STEM teachers as well as non-STEM teachers who collaborate to envision and articulate an integrated learning experience. So to effectively facilitate this entire curriculum and the cycles that go through for development, we found that the successful leaders were very well versed in the preferred STEM learning outcomes, and they were familiar with the state standards for the different STEM disciplines, and especially employability skills. We also found that they could readily identify the cross-cutting concepts, principles, and practices that connect and cut across those STEM disciplines. Of course, the Next Generation Science Standards has done a wonderful job of identifying a core set of cross-cutting concepts, such as energy and matter, systems and systems models, stability and change that everyone can envision within their own discipline. These school leaders were also familiar with the signature practices and processes of the different STEM disciplines, such as experimentation that goes on in a traditional science class, but the troubleshooting that might go on in computer science and technology class, as well as focusing in on design and engineering design and the many considerations that an engineer might use in their own setting, or the computational thinking that would occur within mathematics. These exemplary school leaders also suggest realistic problems and contexts from their own community that help guide teachers to make those connections and motivate students. Of course, to do so, school leaders are going to have to be familiar with the events and the resources, the leaders, controversies, and other opportunities that are occurring in their community and state. If we look at the research, we can see that there is documentation that student achievement might differ under different integration strategies. Whether math and science are taught sequentially or in parallel, or whether students are having a required engineering and design experience during their high school or middle school curriculum. School leaders should be especially attentive to the curricular components that form the integration, especially as that relates to formative assessment and just-in-time instruction materials to support teachers and students who struggle, especially as they struggle with math and other types of learning goals that may be more complex. And of course, successful school leaders also assist curriculum workers in assuring that the units are rigorous and coherent, that all of the component parts are connected to each other. The learning goals, the information, the resources, the activity, and of course the assessments mutually support each other and create clear pathways that stretch across grade level and at high school in particular connect to post-secondary educational programs. The next section, our set of competencies, deals with instructional practices. Translating integrative curriculum into engaging learning experiences is certainly the responsibility of teachers, but assuring that teachers employ those STEM-preferred pedagogical approaches, like problem-based learning, inquiry, and design-based learning, well, that's the responsibility of school leaders. Therefore, school leaders need to be, once again, well-versed in the features of these approaches and be able to recognize quality implementation, as well as recognize barriers to implementation. For instance, novice teachers often present research and inquiry as a linear process, rather than emphasizing that organic, interacting, and iterative nature of the milestones of these professional practices. So school leaders need to promote radical collaboration among mathematics, science, and technology and engineering teachers, as well as non-STEM teachers, and help them map out those points of opportunities and introduce and reinforce each other as they're striving to provide an integrated learning experience. An example of curriculum and instruction if we could go on to the next slide, please, Krista. An example of a curriculum instruction comes to us from Burris Laboratory School, which is attached to Ball State University. We know that school leaders have taken several approaches to develop and implement STEM curriculum and instruction within our schools, and they could do that through investing in prepackaged curricula, or by promoting the local development of curriculum and instruction. Well, Burris Laboratory School has tried both approaches. They began by examining, adapting, and using prepackaged curricula, STEM curricula in their school. And then over time, the teachers took the design thinking process and made it their own and started developing and implementing learning experiences that really focused in on the community around them and provided those hands-on problem solving and design challenges for students. These locally developed curricula also integrate the English and language arts and the social studies and include other resources in their units of instruction. And the laboratory shown here, we can see the design thinking process within that laboratory houses equipment and materials in an innovation lab where every teacher can access to help implement that curriculum unit. Next. Our research has also found that exemplary integrative STEM programming extends beyond the walls of the school and beyond the school day and year. These extended learning opportunities include a broad range of programs that provide students and their families with STEM-related academic experiences and with supervision. School-supported student organizations, which meet after school hours, are common examples of these programs, such as Technology Student Association or competitive student teams, such as FIRST or VEX teams, the Indiana Science Olympiad, Odyssey of Mind, or the Super Mileage Challenge. Not only do these types of programs offer opportunities to deepen and extend STEM learning, but they also have competitive events where students can test their mettle against teams in their region, their state, or even the nation. Successful extended learning programs are collaboratively envisioned and implemented with the support of multiple external partnerships from local businesses, community service organizations, and professional societies, and let's not forget institutions of higher education like Ball State. For example, partnering with a museum or a park and recreation facility or university to offer a STEM-related camp during the summer is one way of extending those STEM-related opportunities beyond the school year. And it also helps raise awareness about STEM careers, preparation for higher education, and enables students to explore their curiosities or delve deeply into their own interests. For high school, STEM leadership is especially needed to strategically form school community partnerships that support career education and employability skill development through activities like job shadowing, internships, work study, and several other types of service learning opportunities. Of course, these out-of-school programs add additional layers of logistical concerns and tasks. So successful school leaders often form STEM outreach committees or a task force or a STEM advisory board to help them focus on these out-of-school programming opportunities and work through those logistical challenges. Career centers and technical schools, of course, have a long history and a model of consistently populating an advisory board that not only provides insights and possibly staffing or financial support for implementing these extended learning opportunities, but those collaborations may also reveal opportunities to align STEM curriculum with community needs and areas of growth. An example comes to us here from the Washington STEM Academy, and more broadly, the entire Warsaw Community School. This is a significant example of forming and sustaining school community partnerships, especially in partnering with members of the biomedical community, water conservation groups, science museums, and local colleges. After all, the Warsaw community is known as the orthopedic capital of the world, where leading manufacturers of orthopedic devices, such as my titanium knee, were manufactured. They have partnerships with Zimmer Biomet, and this has generated financial support for STEM-related equipment and volunteer opportunities, as well as professional development opportunities for school leaders and collaborative development for STEM curriculum development. The school has also collaborated with researchers from the Lilly Center for Lakes and Streams at Grace College that has provided K through third grader students with field trip opportunities to study the many local lakes and streams and in a water ecology unit. In addition, Washington STEM Academy implements multiple after-school learning opportunities for students and their families, including FIRST and LEGO League robotics teams. They enable a digitarium to come to the school where the community can explore the stars and constellations within an inflatable dome. And they have showcase nights where students' projects are put on display so students can explain what they've done and defend their decisions. And maker nights are available so that parents and members of the community can come in with their students and enjoy and learn about these opportunities that the school is providing. Of course, if a school is trying to enhance its integrative STEM culture, there's going to need a strong commitment for professional learning. And that professional learning, of course, should be for most of the school staff. You know, STEM teachers and non-STEM teachers need a lot of opportunities to study evidence-based models of STEM curricula. They need to observe it. They need to see where those cross-cutting concepts and principles are integrated into these learning experiences. They need to observe STEM instruction, especially the exemplary use of inquiry, experimentation, design, and engineering. They need to develop the collaboration and negotiation skills, especially as that relates to curriculum development and assessment. And they need to learn about how to use performance assessment effectively and evaluate the qualities of different performance tasks and different rubrics. And given that STEM is changing at a dynamic rate, they also need time and resources so that they can familiarize themselves with contemporary laboratory tools and processes that are essential to creating authentic learning experiences. The research of Hill, Lynch, Gonzalez, and Pollard found that above average student gains occurred when professional development experiences included several characteristics at the same time. This meta-analysis showed that those characteristics were a focus on new curriculum materials, an aim to improve teachers' content knowledge and their pedagogy, as well as providing cohort learning groups where same school participants work together to troubleshoot and discuss the classroom implementation of STEM learning experiences. But of course, teachers aren't the only ones that need professional learning. School counselors also need these opportunities so that they can advance their understanding of the factors that influence students' academic and career choices, especially as this relates to historically underrepresented groups of students. And they need to be able to learn more about interventions and response services that will positively impact student STEM career outcomes. But let's not forget that school leaders and instructional coaches also need professional learning opportunities to strengthen and expand their knowledge and skills related to recognizing high quality integrative STEM curriculum and instruction, and helping them take on fully the role of being instructional coaches, being able to provide constructive and actionable feedback to teachers. But we also, those school leaders need to learn more about what the scheduling approaches might be out there to enable this radical collaboration, and strategies and techniques to help initiate and sustain partnerships with community leaders. Many of the professional learning principles that I've just named are evident in the Yorktown School District. Working to improve STEM outcomes for their Yorktown students, a STEAM leadership team, and by STEAM, I'm adding arts to that science, technology, engineering, and mathematics acronym. That STEAM leadership team planned and implemented a two-pronged program for their educators. The first was a project-based cohort where 20 educators participated in a summer and a school term program where the outcome was for teachers to develop and implement a project-based learning unit with their students during the school term. Then in succeeding years, these educators mentored one of their teacher peers. The second prong of the professional learning program was personalized. Each educator chose STEM-related learning opportunities that related to their own needs. You know, things like learning more about STEM literacy, STEM content, STEM equipment, and technology integration. So in the next two domains of competencies that we'll talk about relate to assessment and evaluation. When we use the term assessment here, we're talking about student assessment. So a strong integrative STEM culture requires school leaders to assure that reliable and valid processes are in place for assessing student outcomes, especially when we're talking about integrated curriculum and instruction. Given the breadth of desired outcomes and active, prolonged nature of student-driven learning experiences, and the distributed expertise among teachers, it's prudent for school leaders to establish the support and time for these interdisciplinary teams of educators, as well as, assessment specialists, to collaboratively develop an assessment plan as well as assessment instruments. The leader needs to set the expectation for that assessment plan by focusing upon measuring students' understanding of enduring cross-cutting principles and concepts. Focus in on transferable skills that reach across the STEM disciplines, and focus in on the level of sophistication in applying those STEM professional practices that align well with Indiana state standards. The school leader should also emphasize that the assessment plan should have a balance of those formative assessment strategies that can be used to adjust the integrative learning experiences and inform curriculum changes, as well as those summative assessments that can be used to document the extent to which students are meeting standards. And let's not forget that part of the desired outcomes of STEM focuses in upon STEM course taking, advanced education, and careers and employability. So including STEM and career interest questionnaires that help students and counselors best understand students' interests and career aptitudes is an important part of looking at an assessment plan. And of course, STEM leaders should encourage the use of multiple types of assessment, especially performance assessment, which many teachers may not be familiar with. And in a performance assessment, students demonstrate their competence while engaged in an open-ended and complex task. This enables students to demonstrate multiple ability levels and their own achievement. Teachers and other evaluators may use a pre-established set of criteria that is described along that continuum of expertise that aligns to the desired STEM learning outcomes. So after assessment data are gathered, school leaders should assist interdisciplinary teams in analyzing that data and then disaggregating that data by different demographic characteristics to better understand how it's impacting different groups of students. The example that we forward here comes from Kokomo, Indiana, at the Maple Crest STEM Middle School. Here they are showing multiple examples, types of assessments that are used for formative and summative purposes. The one on the left is a summative assessment that's completed by both teachers and students at the end of a design challenge. And it employs criteria that really focus in on those employability skills, and then offers 4 levels of achievement for each of the criteria. And of course, you can see that students can then interpret their own achievement level and what they're shooting for, what their goals are relative to these different employability skills. The images to the right depict the STEM interest questionnaire that a guidance counselor might use at different times of the school year to help gauge student interest in STEM education and help guide them in making good decisions about their educational pathways. To make significant progress in strengthening integrative STEM culture and programming in a school, the improvement process should be approached from a systems-wide perspective. Evaluation processes and the data that it generated is a critical component to inform improvement and judge the extent to which the school is meeting its STEM education mission and desired student outcomes. Thus, the school leaders have a critical role in establishing reliable and valid evaluation processes for the full breadth of the school programming and its curriculum, its professional learning program, and extended learning program, and especially as it relates to staffing. School leaders should be particularly focused on a cycle of data gathering, analysis, reflection, and feedback to support all staff, including teachers, in their efforts to improve their STEM teaching practices and empowering students to solve authentic problems as scientists, as mathematicians and technologists and engineers. This cycle of evaluation should inform improvements in the integrative STEM curriculum and ensure that the curricular components mutually support each other, and of course aligned with grade level standards. Doing so may require changes to the teacher evaluation process. And those changes, of course, would be embedded in those cycles of data gathering and include multiple sources of information to help make those decisions and revisions a part of the regularly scheduled calendar for school staff. And school leaders should monitor the development of evaluation plans and data and ensure that that data is gathered, analyzed, and used by the different stakeholders in the school and out of school to inform decisions. The Indiana Department of Education offers a valuable resource to assist school leaders in evaluating the STEM culture of their school as part of the STEM certification process. The K-8 STEM certification guide and the one for high school, which will soon be delivered to us, outlines the state level goals and process and timeline for designating a school as a STEM model school. The evaluation rubric is especially helpful in conducting a self-evaluation, as it identifies the criteria and acceptable evidence to document progress over time and trying to reach that school of excellence. And that is applied into 4 domains of STEM culture, STEM curriculum, instruction, and partnerships. In addition, the needs assessment tool available from the STEM-Centric section of Keep Indiana Learning assists STEM leaders in identifying how their practices and formal and informal programming align to the Indiana state expectations. So at this time, I will leave the remainder of the programming to you, Krista.
All right, thank you so much, Annette. We appreciate it. So again, this was the STEM Leadership Series Part 1, and what we were looking at was developing a STEM-centric culture in PK-12 schools. I did want to open it up at this time. If anyone in the audience has any questions, we would be more than happy to try to answer to the best of our abilities. Okay, well, if there are no questions, I will continue on. So with the Part 1, looking at the STEM-centric culture, we have a couple of reflection questions, some prompts that we would like you to think about after this presentation. And before, if you choose to listen to our second presentation, looking at mission and vision. So after this presentation, how does integrative STEM education differ from STEM education? What did you interpret from our presentation into the differences between these and from our GM board discussion? The second prompt, what are characteristics of an integrative STEM culture? And then thirdly, what examples of integrative STEM education exist in your school? For those of us who joined us after we began, so again, these are our presenters for today. We had Dr. Rachel Gisa, Assistant Clinical Professor of Educational Leadership at Ball State University. We had Dr. Mary Annette Rose, an Associate Professor of Educational Studies at Ball State University, and myself, Dr. Krista Stith, Director of the Center for Gifted Studies and Talent Development at Ball State University. For the subsequent presentations, our next one is going to be June 29th at 1:30 p.m. and it's going to be a very similar framework to this. And we're going to be looking at mission and vision of STEM in integrative approaches in K-12 schools. And then part 3 is going to be July 18th at 1:30 p.m. And with this presentation, we're going to be delving more into curriculum and instruction in integrative STEM approaches in PK through 12 schools. And then lastly, if you're looking for some additional support in this idea of developing a student-centered culture, and as well as our other presentations on mission and vision, curriculum and instruction, but also those additional domains that we talked about, like extended learning, assessment, and evaluation. Again, we have this resource for you, Leadership in Integrative STEM Education, available at Rowman and Littlefield's website, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and additional other websites as well. These are our resources from our presentation today. And we wanted to thank you for your attendance today with, again, Dr. Gisa, Dr. Rose, and myself. And Amanda, we will now pass it on to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Great information. There's so much more to learn. Definitely check out the introduction session that was held previously. I did drop the link to that in the chat. You can also go to the Keep in and Learning website and do a search. They have something called the Engagement Center there. So you can go there and see a calendar of all of the upcoming events. That'll give you the link that I also dropped in the chat for the one that's coming up yet this month. And then also you can access the one that's coming up in July for this series as well. But definitely go there, take a look at the Engagement Center, do a little search there for the STEM resources, and you will find the rest of the leadership series registration pages, as well as many, many other options that you can dive into. Thank you so much for our presenters today and our friends from Ball State. Look forward to seeing everyone towards the end of the month for the next session in this leadership series. And as always, reach out to, you have the email addresses of the presenters there, or you can reach out to myself through STEM-Centric for some additional one-on-one support with your STEM initiatives in your schools. So thanks so much and have a great day.